If you want to get mad about Brian Gutekunst's draft record, I understand it. But when it comes to free agency and scouting the rest of the league, this front office is as good as it gets in professional football.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. You're concerned, perhaps, about the Packers overpaying. Banks, Hobbs, not names you thought you would see the Packers spend big money on. We still don't know, by the way, on Aaron Banks, what the guaranteed money is. It's going to be the signing bonus, and that's it. I have a feeling cash flow in the first year or two is going to be low. And then it will pick up. Maybe year 3 will probably be a goose year. Just goose those 4-year earnings up there so you can put that big number when you send out the tweet. If you are nervous about that, first of all, it doesn't matter what you pay if you get a good player. It really doesn't. The cap is manipulatable enough. It's not that the cap is fake. It's that if you sign good players, it doesn't matter. It's not a hindrance to you. You can keep your good players usually. When you look at Brian Gutekunst's track record, and not just Brian Gutekunst, but the scouting staff, the people in the front office whose job it is, who scout the rest of the league, they have proven that they basically do not miss. When you look at free agency, it is almost a spotless record for the Green Bay Packers when it comes to paying real money deals. Real money deals under Brian Gutekunst. The first move Brian Gutekunst makes is the worst one. They move on from Jordy Nelson, which was a fine idea at the time. I know it hurt the fan base, but the demise was there. They brought in Jimmy Graham. They had been trying to find. Aaron Rodgers had made it clear. Ted Thompson had made it clear. They wanted a tight end. Mike McCarthy had made it clear. They wanted a tight end, a high-level tight end. They come in and they pay Jimmy Graham essentially the money that would have gone to Jordy Nelson. And it didn't work. And it didn't work basically right away. It was obvious this guy just not moving the way that he used to. And I will always believe that the only reason he played more than 1 year of his contract was Aaron Rodgers wanted him around. After that, when you look at the real money, I'm not talking about 1 year, $2.5 million Devin Funchess. I'm not talking about 1 year, $4 million Sammy Watkins. I'm not talking about the mercenary Rick Wagner deals. That's not what we're talking about here. Those are flyer cheap. You hope you can get something. Now, the Packers have been, I would say, mostly unlucky in those. Like the Eagles signed Zach Bond and he becomes an all-pro. He signed a flyer deal. $4 or $5 million contract. It's a flyer. You hope you get a capable starter out of him and you're getting plus EV. They got an all-pro. He just got the bag. That doesn't usually happen, but that's why you take those flyers. But look at the real money contracts handed out by the Green Bay Packers in the Brian Gutekunst era. Preston Smith played the best games of his career, the best seasons of his career in Green Bay. no question that's a hit. Zadarius Smith, I understand the way that it ended, but for 2 years, he gave you all pro caliber, and that was a huge gamble. He had never been a full-time starter. The Packers, you look at the tape, he had the pressure rates, and they said, we can project this out. That was an incredible gamble. And really, the only reason it didn't work is because COVID prevented them from extending him. Had the pandemic not hit and revenues not been, the salary cap ended up flattening. Had that not happened, I do think the Packers would have at least considered extending Zadarius Smith. There were attitude issues. He has, 4 teams in 3 seasons once he gets signed here. So I think we have to take that into account here as well. But he was awesome for the Packers. 19 and 20, he was awesome. That was a great signing. Billy Turner had the best years of his career in Green Bay. Played better in Green Bay than anywhere else in his career. Played left tackle when they needed him to when David Bakhtiari went down. Played right tackle. He could play guard when they needed him to. He was undeniably, was he an all-pro? Was he Zadarius Smith? No. But he wasn't being paid to be. He was paid to be a quality starter, which is what he was. Adrian Amos, the picture of consistency in Green Bay. Absolute, no doubt, home run. He was excellent for the Packers. So you go 4 for 4 big game hunting in 2019, that offseason. Then I mentioned the COVID spike happened, the reverse spike. That caused them, I think, to have to move some money around. Who knows? Maybe Billy Turner plays the full length of his contract or he gets an extension. I think Zadarius Smith, there was a chance he would get an extension. The signings they would make after that were the little ones here and there. Those flyers that I mentioned, the Christian Kirksey's, the Devin Funchess, the Sammy Watkins. Until last offseason. When they gave Xavier McKinney was on no one's top 5 list. No one thought Xavier McKinney was a top 5 safety in the NFL. But the Packers paid him at the top of the market. And he was first team All-Pro, one of the 2 best safeties in the NFL last season. An unmitigated dub for Brian Gutekunst. Josh Jacobs comes in, Aaron Jones goes out. Again, this hurts the fan base's feelings. I understand that. It is a difficult thing to say goodbye to a legend. And Luke Braun, it was personally offensive to me when he said now a couple more years in Minnesota, he can deepen that connection to his Vikings fan base and history and that part of his career. And I was just like that sounds horrible to me, but that's the reality when you move on. But they moved on to a better player. Josh Jacobs was one of the 3 best. He was probably the 3rd best running back in the league last year. But the best was Saquon Barkley and the second best was Derrick Henry. They both had historic seasons. Josh Jacobs was outstanding. And it's not just those. I mentioned some of those flyer deals. In 2019, when they most needed him, they had Jared Valdir. Brian Bulaga got sick for a playoff game, and on no notice, they had to bring in Jared Valdir. That's all the Packers league scouting staff in the front office. They go out in July, August. They signed Devondre Campbell before the 2021 season to nothing, for nothing. He gives them an all-pro season. They pluck Russell Douglas off the Arizona Cardinals practice squad. He becomes a Pro Bowl caliber player for them, a leader in that locker room. And if they won a couple more games at the beginning of the 2023 season, he might still be on the roster. Who knows? Who knows? So when you look at the best moves of the Brian Gutekunst era, I understand the problems that people have with the first round picks. I do. Lucas Van Ness, developmental. They drafted Rashawn Gary, who's a good player. They could have had Brian Burns. I understand. They could have had DK Metcalf. I get it. I understand the misgivings you might have about some of the drafting over the last few years, especially this 2021 draft class. Isaiah McDuffie is the only guy who's going to get a second contract in Green Bay from that 2021 class. That's brutal. You can't take the collar in a draft and expect to be competitive. And yet, the Packers have done exactly that, in part because they have been so good at finding, evaluating, and saying these guys for us are worth the money. You don't have to believe me. And you don't have to think Brian Gutekunst is infallible, but this front office, when it comes to evaluating the players around the league, I don't know who could possibly have a better track record bringing in players at a higher rate of success and maybe a greater unlikelihood, if that's even grammatically close to correct. Like, there is no way Zadarius Smith, having never been a starter, should get paid near the top of the market and then be an all-pro for 2 seasons. That's crazy. Xavier McKinney, who is like maybe the 8th or 10th best safety by consensus national narratives heading into the 2024 season, is one of the 2 best safeties in the league. That is crazy. People thought Josh Jacobs overpaid. Why are they paying a running back? Why not just pay Aaron Jones? He was outstanding. 90 plus Pro Football Focus grade, had the best year of his career by quality. I know he led the league in rushing a couple years ago. This scouting staff is really good at this. So if you're going to have faith, it's not just blind faith. It's not homerism. It's the track record. Let the history speak for itself. And speaking of history, the Minnesota Vikings, all I keep hearing, they're a quarterback away. What if JJ McCarthy is really good? We have to dispel the quarterback away myth. It's not a thing. Let's put it to bed. This episode of Locked On Packers is brought to you by our friends at Betterhelp. Taking care of your mental health can feel like a big investment, but it's just as important as taking care of your body. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 a session. But with BetterHelp, you can save up to 50% per session. BetterHelp offers a flat fee for weekly online therapy sessions, making professional support more accessible and affordable. With over 30,000 therapists and over 5 million people helped, it's the world's largest online therapy platform. We spend money on gym memberships and healthy food is expensive, man. Why not invest in our mental well-being? Not just our bodies, but our minds, our souls. Feed them too. Your well-being is worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. The Minnesota Vikings, they're bringing most of their guys back. Byron Murphy came back on a big money deal. They signed Jonathan Allen to a big money deal, which I did not anticipate, did not expect, did not like, frankly. Would not have done that deal for the Packers. They signed Will Freeze, the guard from Indianapolis, to a similar money to Aaron Banks. I need people to understand this is just the guard market. It is 15 plus minimum if you want a starter. The Packers paid 18, 19. That's the deal. That's what these players cost now. The rising cap, we're going to have to reorient ourselves around this. But what I kept hearing and kept seeing, and this is a long-running NFL bit, coming into every year or coming out of every year, we hear such and such a team is just a quarterback away. If they could just find a quarterback. First of all, no duh. Every team is a quarterback away, because if you don't have a quarterback, you cannot win in the NFL. Period. Full stop. And so what I know people mean, right? Like, don't get mad. I know they mean, well, this is a complete team except the quarterback. Okay. The Chicago Bears have not had a star quarterback since color television. The Cleveland Browns have not had a star quarterback since the Berlin Wall fell. This is the hardest thing to do in the sport. It is a stupid thing to say. Oh, they're a quarterback away. Yeah, it's really hard to get a quarterback. What are we talking about? And let's put this in specific context here for the Minnesota Vikings. Oh, they're a quarterback away. They're a quarterback away. Sam Darnold produced like a top 10, maybe a top 5 quarterback last year. Was he by quality? Probably not. But by production, he was. Kirk Cousins on not the same team, but a somewhat similar team a couple years ago. Gave them top 10, top 12 quarterback production. And win anything. So what you're saying is they need an elite quarterback? They're an elite quarterback away from being a Super Bowl contender. 31 other teams can say the same thing. What are we talking about? This is absurd. Yes, if JJ McCarthy is awesome, they're a Super Bowl contender. The likelihood of any single quarterback, this is not JJ McCarthy specific, this is not about Packers Vikings. The odds of JJ McCarthy being awesome are small because there are only so many awesome quarterbacks in the league. And history says they're not all awesome. History says you're talking about less than a 50% proposition, less than a 50% hit rate of just good players, much less great players. So if you need an improvement on Sam Darnold, who threw 35 touchdowns last year, then you need Josh Allen. You need Lamar Jackson. You need Joe Burrow. You need Patrick Mahomes. If you're upgrading from Sam Darnold, that's what you need. Because they had Sam Darnold and that wasn't enough. Now they upgraded the offensive line. That's going to help. They upgraded the defensive line. I think that's going to help. They were a really good defense last year. Kevin O'Connell did a really good job of mitigating some of the issues that Sam Darnold had. They have Justin Jefferson. They had Jordan Addison. They have TJ Hawkinson. They have Aaron Jones. They've got one of the best tackle duos in the league. Sam Darnold played at a terrific level. They lost in the first round. And like got beat up in the first round. So that means JJ McCarthy has to be one of the 6 or 8 best quarterbacks in the league, elevate his team for them to be a Super Bowl team. Now, I'm not saying he can't do that, can't be that. But it's pretty unlikely. It's pretty unlikely. Just the odds of any one quarterback being good, small. Small. At least someone we've never seen. We have no frame of reference, no basis. And also, you look at last year's draft, like Jaden Daniels is a dude. Drake May looks like a dude. Bo Nix was really good. Caleb Williams was Caleb Williams. I think he's the 4th best of that group. What are the chances that JJ McCarthy is as good as Jaden Daniels? Like infinitesimal. Infinitesimal. There's not no chance. But there's a very small chance that he is as good as Jaden Daniels. That's the level you're talking about him having to play at for them to be a Super Bowl team. So if that's what you're saying, then they are the same as every other team in the freaking league. They need a high-level quarterback to be really competitive. And this is the thing. Go back into the playoffs. The Ravens had a better team. If you took Lamar Jackson off the Ravens, would you say they're a quarterback away? Maybe you would. I don't think I would, but maybe you would. If you took Patrick Mahomes off the Chiefs, would you say they're a quarterback away? Absolutely not. Now, if you took Jalen Hurts off of the Eagles, you'd say they're a quarterback away. How many rosters in the league are actually truly a quarterback away? But guess who wins the Super Bowl? The team that has the quarterback. So it's a superfluous thing to even say. Because if you don't have the quarterback, it doesn't matter. If you have a Ferrari and can't afford gas, it doesn't matter. It's a pretty thing to look at, though. So it's again, Viking fans will find this and be mad about it. This is not the Vikings. It could be the freaking, Bengals. It could be the Dolphins. I don't care. This is a stupid, stupid, stupid thing to say. We have to stop saying it. Because especially in this case, what you're saying is really that you need a high level, an elite level quarterback to be a Super Bowl contender. And congratulations, that goes for every team. With maybe the exception of the Eagles, who, Jalen Hurts, say whatever you want about him. He's played his best in the biggest games. I think he's got a little bit of an Eli Manning to him. He's Eli Manning with much better aura. The aura difference in those two is outrageous. But, look, how many quarterbacks could have won with that Eagles team last year? That team was a quarterback away. And they got good enough quarterback play. 99 out of 100 times. It's just not true. And so it's not an interesting thing to say. Because what you really are saying is what they need is an elite quarterback to be good. We say this all the time. Well, they just need a Teddy Bridgewater. No, they don't. Teddy Bridgewater doesn't win Super Bowls. Jared Goff, at least to date, does not win Super Bowls. Not a coincidence that in the biggest games of Jared Goff's life, in the playoffs, he lost to Tom Brady and Jaden Daniels. Pretty good players. And even having the quarterback is often still not good enough. You still need to get some luck. See 2014 Packers. See 2020, 2021 Packers. So let's stop doing this. Now, speaking of the Vikings, I have an idea. And it's not even an idea. It's not even a suggestion. I have a question I want to ask you. And I'm not even going to say hear me out because I'm not even suggesting it. Why don't I just tell you what it is? We'll come back and I'll do that. March Madness is here and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the next. You can bet on underdogs. You can bet on favorites. Spreads, totals, player props, whatever you want. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. And in the FanDuel app, it's simple to use. When I win, I get paid instantly, no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Thank you for making Locked On Packers your first listen. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. I was thinking, and I was going through the list of players. And I went, okay, there really is no opportunity for the Packers to find the player that they could really use in this offense. Need might be overselling it because I do think there is a world in which you run this group back, you find some speed in the draft, even on day 3, you had a Dante Thornton or someone like that. You can make this work for a while. I think you have the pieces in place. I've talked about Tucker Kraft. I've talked about wanting to play Jaden Reed more in 2 receiver sets as an outside receiver. In the nickel, it's fine. I'm talking about Jaden Reed as Nate Hobbs, right? But receivers, when they're in a 2 receiver set, so 2 running backs or 2 tight ends, I want Jaden Reed on the field. And then when they're in nickel, when they're in sub, when they're in 11 personnel, he's in the slot. It's the Casey Hayward, but receivers. Remember Casey Hayward used to play the boundary and then in nickel, he'd be the slot? I want to see Jaden Reed do that. I want to see Dontavian Wicks take a step. The talent is there. They've got it. But I see a team like the Ravens. I see teams like the Chiefs. And they see, whether it's that useful to them or not, the utility of someone like Nuke Hopkins. I don't know that he makes a ton of sense for the Packers. I kind of came around on it last year. But then the Packers showed that they didn't really need that. And I don't want to over-index what happened last year. I think for a lot of reasons, it was very weird. But there is one player still available where I went, I don't know, he can do some of the things you would want from a potential addition to this receiver room, a veteran in the Josh Jacobs mold that would command some respect and some attention from opposing defenses, some respect and attention from Packers receivers. Are you ready? Don't get mad. Is there a number? Is there a number? I'm not suggesting this. I'm asking. Is there a number at which Stefon Diggs makes sense for the Green Bay Packers? Is there a number? Like if you give him the Sammy Watkins deal, 1 year, 4. Let's just say Sammy Watkins deal with inflation. Like what did DeAndre Hopkins get? 1 year, 6. Would Stefon Diggs, who tore his ACL at the end of October, so a full 2 months sooner than Christian Watson. Let's say hey, look, the knee's feeling great in July. I'll be pretty close here, and we can do some workouts and see where you are. You go through the draft process. The pass rusher there that you wanted in the first round, and then the second round, the corner that you really wanted is there, and then in the third round, hey, that D tackle we really, really liked is there. It just didn't work to find that high-level receiver, that bucket-getter receiver. You just didn't find what you were looking for. Do you make a phone call? I understand the locker room question marks, the attitude question marks, but also time has a way of smoothing the edges, not just of our memories, but of people. You come to understand the triviality of some of the everyday things that we would get mad about. And in the case of Stefon Diggs, he's getting older. But you watched him at the beginning of last year. He can still play. Is he an alpha 1 anymore? No. And he didn't go to Houston to be that either. That was going to be Nico Collins. But then you have a really good wide receiver 2 with Tank Dell in the slot, and you've really got something. Could you have Stefon Diggs, Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Doubs, and Jaden Reed and feel like, hey, on 3rd and 8, we can call something for Stefon Diggs. We think he's going to get open. He can still run routes. Now, off the ACL, physically, where is he? The one of the reasons why I could talk myself into this is, and we'll see what happens in the draft. Like if they get Jalen Royals at 55 or Jaden Higgins at 23, or I'm trying to think of like 3rd round receivers that I would be excited about. Like if Jalen Royals somehow fell to the 3rd round, I don't like using that phrasing, but like, let's say he's there in the 3rd round, no brainer. Then I think you just let it ride. But again, let's say the draft doesn't go the way that you were thinking. I would rather, let's say it's 6 or 8. I kind of think it makes sense for the Packers to at least consider it. He's got to know what he's walking into. He's got to know that he's got to be a mentor. He's got to know that this is not bitch about the ball time. You've got to humble yourself in front of the football gods, understanding, this is 3 teams in 3 years. And your legacy's on the line a little bit. You want to go win a Super Bowl? You want to play the Vikings twice a year? Show them what they're missing? And play the little chip on your shoulder, come to Green Bay. I think there is an opportunity there potentially. Again, not suggesting it. I'm not. You guys know I'm not a coward about that stuff. I will, if I think something is a good idea, I am not afraid to share my opinion that I think, hey, I think this is smart. I think this is smart. I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying I've thought about it. And it is something that I think if the draft goes a certain way, I don't think the Packers would consider it. I'm saying if the draft, we could be sitting here in May, early May, and I could be advocating for it. Somewhat similar to like the Odell Beckham situation in 2021. Now, he turned out to be much better in 2021 than I think you would expect Stefon Diggs to be. When you saw Odell Beckham, like he was going to win that Super Bowl MVP. But I think Diggs could still have a really nice year for the Packers in this offense with these guys and be someone who can help with little pointers here and there, who could draw coverage, who can make life easier for Jaden Reed, for example. Look, I knew some of you were going to be mad and not like it. It's just, I'm just here asking questions, guys. That's all I'm doing. And I'm going to keep doing it all off season because that's what we do. More with the tampering period. Well, now the actual league year is going to start. So we don't have to worry about the tampering period anymore. So we'll be live if there's new stuff. If the Packers trade for Trey Henderson, for example, or, they're not going to sign Stephon Diggs because with the ACL in October, he's not even ready to talk about coming to a team. Another reason why it might be interesting, because you could do it later in the year. Guys come back and you're not really feeling the way that they are, or maybe you get a really appealing trade offer after the draft for Romeo Dobbs. I don't know. It could happen. But we'll be live if something big happens over the next couple weeks. Otherwise, the draft, I'll be in Green Bay for the draft. Let me know if you're going to be there. We got some cool stuff coming your way for that. So follow me on all the social medias, Peter_Bukowski on the X, Blue Sky, all that's the Threads. We're on Threads if you want to be on Threads. And of course, subscribe to the podcast wherever you find podcasts on YouTube so you can stay locked on Packers.